I'm live to no one at the moment, but that doesn't mean that I'm going to sit here boringly. I'll try tuning this here lyre for the time until at least one person shows up, because you got to be entertaining beforehand. You never know who's watching not live. I'm not good at playing instruments, but I got this one here to practice. Very simple. Got a tuner on my phone here. I wouldn't be surprised if nobody shows up live. I didn't schedule this in any way. I don't really like living by a schedule. I don't even like clocks, but they're everywhere. As far as I'm concerned, this is Cold Stone's readery, not Mussolini's train yard. Things don't have to run on schedule here. Or rather, they run by my schedule. Ooh. I'm not a musician. I don't know how things work. I don't know musical notes. Yeah. I mean, that one's on a G. Is it supposed to be? It kind of sounds funky. Listen. Do 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 bow. I don't know. Do do do. It's perfectly tuned to G. Is it supposed to be a G? Let's try to recall. Tuning a 7th string lyre is not that bad. There's only 7 strings here to worry about, but it goes from tuned to untuned in about 1 second. I also don't know the quality, how well you can actually hear the music. Never heard it before. This is going to be a test. For all I know, you can't hear it at all, or it's peaking the audio. Doesn't look like it. It seems to be quieter than my voice here. Let's try. Let's actually get it closer. Yeah, that G in there. It's perfectly tuned to G. D-E-G-A-H-D. H. There's an H? See, I don't know anything about notes. D-E-G. So I think it's supposed to be an A. Let's just play around with it until it sounds good. I don't care what it's supposed to be. It is what I want it to be because it's my instrument. Sounds pretty good there. Who would want to read Jack London to themselves with nobody? If even one viewer shows up, let me know, and I'll read Jack London to you, and we can sit and talk about London and stories of nature. But for the time being, play this lyre. A liar and a player, too. I've met too many men like you. Let's try a song. I could kind of do... What is it? If anybody's there, just let me know. And is desperate to get to the story. It says no viewers, but I can't trust that number. I don't trust anything. Can't trust anything. Oh, I probably shouldn't whistle. For all of all. Yeah, this is the G. G, A, B, D, E, D, A, G, E, B, D, E. I think. I can kind of do this. I probably want a guitar pick. I got big fat fingers because I'm a big fat guy. Oh, sorry for yelling. I'm sorry. Oh boy, oh boy. I saw my audio freaking out. Uh-oh. I have to fart. I don't know if it's going to be caught on audio. It's embarrassing. Disgusting. I can't believe I would do such a freakish thing. And it passed anyways. But if I do fart, please don't judge me. Oh, I'm getting a glare on the glasses. I'm not sure there's much I can do about that. My webcam lights up when it's turned on. Sounds kind of funny. For days of all. Uh-oh. Disgusting! Anybody here fart? I know I never fart. I would never do it too. Oh, it's too much. Tuning these things is like... It's like a metaphor. It's like some sort of metaphor I didn't make. Because you have to get just barely anything. It's like a metaphor for something that you just barely have to touch. I can't think of the metaphor right now, but somebody, you fill it in your own head. I can't do all the work for you. All of them are just slightly out of tune, even though I've been tuning it literally all day. Let's see. Anybody there? Am I here all alone? Is there anybody out there? I wish I could play that. Is there anybody out there? Bees all Funko Pop. Anybody out there a collector of Funko Pops? Me personally, I spend $675 a month on Funko Pops. I spend more than my rent on Funko Pops. I wish that was more than my rent on Funko Pops. My wife knew this before she married me, but now she wants a divorce. Am I the asshole? That's a Reddit reference. I'm sorry for that. I promise I'll never speak on that horrible website again. I don't even know if it's a Reddit reference, to be honest. I have never browsed Reddit. Well, that's not true. About a decade ago, I browsed Reddit for probably a year. Except for probably on Reddit right now, trying to find out about lyres. Should all the contents be forgot and ne'er brought to mind? Should all the contents be forgot, for all of auld lang syne? For auld lang syne, my dear, for auld lang syne. For... I don't know the words, I'm just saying auld lang syne over and over again. Still nobody. See, I should change the name of this to Tuning My Lyre. I guess it's an accurate title no matter what, because even if I don't ever read Jack London, then I'll be a liar. That wasn't a real laugh, sorry. Saturday night and I'm sitting here tuning a lyre. Shows how much I have going on in my life. Dead air, dead air, dead air, dead air, dead air, dead air, dead air. I apologize for that brief moment of dead air. Ooh, that sounds good. Oh no. Okay, I won't do that disgustingness again. I do have to apologize for doing something that's completely normal that every single human being on the planet does. That really is, something or other, I don't know. Bet you the ancient Greeks weren't playing them like that. Falling sign. I assume that song's public domain, since it was invented by God himself, I think. D, G, A, B, B, D. I don't have that much of an instinct for improv on this thing, at least. Obviously, for comedy, it's very clear that I'm a genius on that. because here's an example. Guitar chip, guitar pick. It looks like a chip. Yummy, me eat. Because me fat. Here's the trick to a good joke. If you have to explain it, it's a good joke. That's a good joke right there. Me eat guitar chip. Me call guitar chip cause me stupid. Me eat guitar chip cause me fat. That's brilliant. Brilliant. Of days go by. I'm gonna write a little song in my head here. Days and days, days and days, days. Watch me, days. Days in a haze of smoke from the bloke. Try sitting it on a lap so I can. Okay. 25 minutes of that have passed. of actual randomness on a funny thing. On a funny block of wood with strings in it. And still nobody cares. But I care. And I'll read anyways. Because I would be doing this alone anyways. Might as well do it on video. Reading from Jack London's Call of the Wild. We did the first 2 parts last stream. Let's start with a poem, but there's nobody here to hear it. So I figure I'll just start with part 3 of Call of the Wild. And if anybody comes, they can... It's hard to say. Is there a point in doing it if there's nobody here? Because it's essentially giving people... why not? Who cares? What else am I doing? Last time, of course, Buck, the dog, was taken from his home and sold to be part of a sled team in the frozen north of Canada. Ooh, 1 viewer. Ha ha ha! Somebody showed up. Hello. You missed my music. Hola. Oh, no hablo inglés. Mi no hablo español. Pardon. Probably. Lire. Parler français. Biblio. Biblio en inglés. No François. No inglés. I can't speak Spanish. No Portuguese. Unfortunately. I can't speak either. Probably not. I know you can't understand me right now. I'm probably not going to get much out of this stream here, since it is all in English. But I do appreciate you dropping by. Oh, you know what's the universal language? Music. Here, I'll play you a song. I don't know how, I don't know if you can understand this, but I can't, I don't speak any Spanish. No play. Not good. No bien. At this. Play it anyway. Okay, let me try to play a real song here. No bien, but best I can do. Bravo. I don't even know. Gracias, gracias. Took me a second to even think of that. I'm that stupid. I took Spanish all throughout school, and I can't remember any of it. Let's see if I can do another song. I'm just reading the music off of my phone here, so I don't know any of these songs by heart. I'm not good at not good yet. It goes. Kind of sounded like it. A little bit. Little. Petit, un peu. Portuguese. No. Oh, translator. I'll use a translator. I gotta switch the stream language to Espanol. I'm looking at E for Espanol. S for Spanish. And I'll translate. I'll say some things in Spanish. Here. I'll say some things in Spanish. Is dir algo español. Dir. Ein a Soy una principate on esto. Trying. Culpa a Google si mis palabras son incorrectas. Per la pronunciación es mi culpa. Pero la pronunciación es mi culpa. That sounds right. La música es la langue universelle. I don't know if I'm speaking informally. Oh, 2 viewers. Hopefully somebody who could speak English too, so I can be understood. Or I could keep going in Spanish. I got Google here translating for me. I love the internet, except for when I hate it, but it's good sometimes. Well, hello, second person. I don't know who you are or what language you speak, but if it's not English, I can translate it with the power of the internet. Or universal, musica. La langue universelle. This almost sounds electric. De donde eres? I should know what that is. Where are you from? USA. USA! I can speak Portuguese and Spanish too. This really is turning into a Spanish stream. But at least you can speak English, it looks like, at least a little. Pretty good. I can speak English and Portuguese too. That's pretty good. You even used the right two. Well, I don't know if maybe you're a native English speaker. I don't know, but a lot of native English speakers use the wrong two. English, I can go on. Well, I have to stick with Spanish for the other viewer here, so I'm just using Google to translate, which is famously accurate, and everybody can understand each other when they use Google. This is now a Spanish language stream. Oh, let's try Portuguese. Since I was doing such a good job on Spanish, I'll try speaking Portuguese. Both of you can speak it. This is probably insulting to many cultures, but least of all Portugal. Okay. No insulting. Okay, good. Good. I don't want to insult. It's cool, man. Well, there you go. I have the Spanish pass, although you don't really need a pass to speak a language. I am speaking Portuguese. That's what I'm going to write. Speaking Estou falando português. Blame pronunciation on Google. We'll give you the Brazilian Portuguese. Uh-oh. Brazil? No, I've never been to Brazil. I'm sure it's a beautiful country. But I did see a video. I don't know if it was real, but I did see a video of a black helicopter swooping down and machine gunning civilians off of the road. Probably shouldn't say these things, since this could be complete misinformation. I'm going to... Google Translator uses Brazilian. Okay. Google Translator apparently uses Brazilian Portuguese. Police force there is hardcore. Yeah, that's what I've heard and seen. It doesn't even look like a police force. It looks like quasi-military, government military, or whatever. Trigger happy, yeah. I mean... You get trigger-happy police everywhere, but you don't get unmarked black helicopters swooping down on civilians everywhere. That's a little nuts. I don't know if that video is accurate. For all I know, I saw it 10 years ago, and I'm half remembering it, so... What's something else I can say in Portuguese? Can you understand Brazilian Portuguese? Is there that much of a difference? Or is it like English, American, and British English? Is it just like a slightly different dialect? Well, City of God portrays it very well. City of God. I assume you're not talking about the book by Augustine. Is that a movie or something? I'm not that. I mostly know books. I don't know. It is one of the best watches. I will check it out, and if you ever come back, I will let you know how I thought, what I thought about that movie. I'll say it in Portuguese. Here, I'll say these in Portuguese for cult movie, really. Okay. One of the best. Here's in Portuguese, a language I've never learned, never studied. I've heard a couple of songs in Portuguese, but that's about it. Never really, unfortunately. I'm sure it's a spoken worldwide, so I'm definitely not trying to. Let's see. Vou assistir ao filme Cidade de Deus e contar o que achei. Aqui. I kind of am doing it with a bit of the French accent, I think. You can send some. I can send you some Portuguese spoken word. Sure, if you want, I'll check it out. I don't know if I can check it out on stream here, because I don't know how to do that, because I'm too technologically illiterate. This is also don't worry, okay. This is supposed to be a stream where I read books, but the problem was that I ran into too many I ran into a Spanish speaker as the only viewer, so I didn't want to read this English book in Spanish. So now I've been talking about other things and not actually reading this book now for 42 minutes. What book is that? Call of the Wild by Jack London. I started reading it on stream. Last stream. This is what I do on stream. I read books. And I started it last stream, and I was going to read through more of it this stream. Comfy book about a dog. Here, this is what I'll do. I'll tell you what happened in the book in Portuguese, according to Google Translate. Was reading online, adventure book, sounds light and fun. Yes, it is light and, well, it's kind of light. There is animal abuse, but he gets used to it. It's from the animal's perspective. It's written. The dog is the main character. I was going to start reading it, and then the Spanish invaded. No livro Call of the Wild un cachorro e tierra de sua casa é usado como caio de treno. Probably just you can blame the words on Google, but the pronunciation is all my fault. I can understand. Wow, pretty impressive. But yeah, it's not an easy language. I don't imagine. Most languages are hard to learn for me. I'm bad at languages. I want to learn more of them. I can speak a little French, and I'm fluent in English, obviously, but nothing else. Nothing else, unfortunately. And I mean a little French, because I'm so bad at languages. Well, if you want to stick around, I am going to start reading this book, I guess London-based. Not me. This guy's name is Jack London. Is he based though? Is that what you're asking? If you're using the slang term based, yeah, he's based. Alcoholic would beat his wife. Very based, as they say. I think that's what based means. Essentially, pretty much just like a bad person, but somebody that you want to pretend you like. That's pretty much what based means. 2 viewers here. 2 of you get to enjoy the second part of. You missed the music, but you can enjoy the story. Yeah, London. That's why. Hopefully, I was trying to steal. Yeah, based drunkards are as usual. Writer, yeah, writers are drunks. I was hoping to steal some Londoners, some English people to this stream by putting London in the stream. I thought they might want to check out, but no, nobody. No English so far. Only the Spanish. Only the Spanish have come. You're in London? You're English? Like from Britain? Wow. Are you from there or did you move? No, but I live here. Okay. Pretty cool. Pretty cool. I'm sorry that there's so much knife crime in Portuguese. Yeah. Yeah, my area is GTA, yeah. Yeah. It seems like, I used to think England was pretty cool, but then I don't know. It seems like they've been kind of going nuts. I mean, you could say the same thing about pretty much everywhere. It's all going nuts. And it's always all been nuts. And it always will be nuts, because people are nuts. Police force is down in numbers. That's everywhere. At least that's in the U.S. too. We're definitely not getting a whole lot of police signing up. Police isn't too popular here right now. It's also pretty popular. There's a lot of police supporters and a lot of police haters. And a lot of people who just don't care and just want to get by. But most people don't care. The USA gets a bad rep because the news is always saying the worst stuff, but most everybody's just normal and chill. I'm sure I don't know if you've been here or not. Probably. Not probably. Yeah, but here happens a few events within the force that made a lot of agents being suspected and a lot of stuff broke internally with the force. And plus, the central protests in central London are taking a lot of agents. Yeah, we had quite a few protests about the police a few years ago too. Probably going to have some more every election year. Every election year here, everything goes nuts. Some people say that's because there are agents in place to make things go nuts every election so that certain people get elected over others. Who knows? I'm not a conspiracy theorist and I'm not spreading that theory. But that's what some people say. I'm just reporting what I've heard. Anyway, I'll read this book because I like it and I like to read. Read if you want. I do want. Go ahead. Thank you for permission. This is part 3. So far, last time the dog Buck was taken from his comfortable home in California and sold and abused and trained in the ways of the cold, frozen north of Canada, where he's being used as a sled dog with a few other with a team of I believe gold. I believe a team of men searching for gold, if I remember correctly. This is part 3, titled "The Dominant Primordial Beast." The dominant primordial beast was strong in Buck, and under the fierce conditions of trail life it grew and grew. Yet it was a secret growth. His newborn cunning gave him poise and control. He was too busy adjusting himself to the new life to feel at ease, and not only did he not pick fights, but he avoided them whenever possible. A certain deliberateness characterized his attitude. He was not prone to rashness and precipitate action. And in the bitter hatred between him and Spitz, he betrayed no impatience, shunned all offensive acts. On the other hand, possibly because he divined in Buck a dangerous rival, Spitz never lost an opportunity of showing his teeth. He even went out of his way to bully Buck, striving constantly to start the fight which could end only in the death of one or the other. Early in the trip this might have taken place had it not been for an unwanted accident. At the end of this day they made a bleak and miserable camp on the shore of Lake Labarge. Driving snow, a wind that cut like a white-hot knife, and darkness had forced them to grope for a camping place. They could hardly have fared worse. At their backs rose a perpendicular wall of rock, and Perrault and Francois were compelled to make their fire and spread their sleeping robes on the ice of the lake itself. The tent they had discarded at Denya in order to travel light. A few sticks of driftwood furnished them with a fire that thwarted down through the ice and left them to eat supper in the dark. Thawed down through the ice and left them to eat supper in the dark. Close in under the sheltering rock, Buck made his nest. So snug and warm was it that he was loath to leave it when Francois distributed the fish which he had first thawed over the fire. But when Buck finished his ration and returned, he found his nest occupied. A warning snarl told him that the trespasser was Spitz. Till now, Buck had avoided trouble with his enemy, but this was too much. The beast in him roared. He sprang upon Spitz with a fury which surprised them both, and Spitz particularly, for his whole experience with Buck had gone to teach him that his rival was an unusually timid dog who managed to hold his own only because of his great weight and size. Francois was surprised, too, when they shot out in a tangle from the disrupted nest, and he divined that the cause of the trouble. "Aha!" he cried to Buck. "Give it to him, by gar! Give it to him, the dirty teffer!" Spitz was equally willing. He was crying with sheer rage and eagerness as he circled back and forth for a chance to spring in. Buck was no less eager and no less cautious, and he likewise circled back and forth for the advantage. But it was then that the unexpected happened, the thing which projected their struggle for supremacy far into the future, past many a weary mile of trail and toil. An oath from Perrault, the resounding impact of a club upon a bony frame, and a shrill yelp of pain heralded the breaking forth of pandemonium. The camp was suddenly discovered to be alive, with skulking, furry forms, starving huskies, 4 or 5 score of them, who had scented the camp from some Indian village. They had crept in while Buck and Spitz were fighting, and when the 2 men sprang upon them with stout clubs, they showed their teeth and fought back. They were crazed by the smell of the food. Perrault found one with head buried in the grub box. His club landed heavily on the gaunt ribs, and the grub box was capsized on the ground. On the instant, a score of the famished brutes were scrambling for the bread and bacon. The clubs fell upon them unheeded. They yelped and howled under the rain of blows, but struggled none the less madly till the last crumb had been devoured. In the meantime, the astonished team dogs had burst out of their nests, only to be set upon by the fierce invaders. Never had Buck seen such dogs. It seemed as though their bones would burst through their skins. They were mere skeletons, draped loosely in draggled hides, with blazing eyes and slavered fangs. But the hunger madness made them terrifying, irresistible. There was no opposing them. The team dogs were swept back against the cliff at the first onset. Buck was beset by 3 huskies, and in a trice his head and shoulders were ripped and slashed. The din was frightful. Billy was crying as usual, Dave and Solex, dripping blood from a score of wounds, were fighting bravely side by side. Joe was snapping like a demon. Once his teeth closed on the foreleg of a husky, and he crunched down through the bone. Pike, the malingerer, leapt upon the crippled animal, breaking its neck with a quick flash of teeth and a jerk. Buck got a frothing adversary by the throat and was sprayed with blood when his teeth sank through the jugular. The warm taste of it in his mouth goaded him to greater fierceness. He flung himself upon another, and at the same time felt teeth sink into his own throat. It was Spitz, treacherously attacking from the side. Oh, that Spitz. That Spitz, that Spitz, that Spitz. A Cannibal Corpse lyric. Famous book. I would not be surprised if it's a reference. Perrault and Francois, having cleaned out their part of the camp, hurried to save their sled dogs. The wild wave of famished beasts rolled back before them, and Buck shook himself free, but it was only for a moment. The 2 men were compelled to run back to save the grub, upon which the huskies returned to the attack on the team. Billy, terrified into bravery, sprang through the savage circle and fled away over the ice. Pike and Dub followed on his heels, with the rest of the team behind. As Buck drew himself together to spring after them, out of the trail of his eye he saw Spitz rush upon him with the evident intention of overthrowing him. Once off his feet and under that mass of huskies, there was no hope for him, but he braced himself to the shock of Spitz's charge, then joined the flight out of the lake. Later, the 9 team dogs gathered together and sought shelter in the forest. Though unpursued, they were in a sorry plight. There was not one who was not wounded in 4 or 5 places, while some were wounded grievously. Dub was badly injured in a hind leg. Dolly, the last husky added to the team at Dea, had a badly torn throat. Joe had lost an eye, while Billy, the good-natured, with an ear chewed and rent to ribbons, cried and whimpered throughout the night. At daybreak they limped wearily back to camp to find the marauders gone and the 2 men in bad tempers. Fully half their grub supply was gone. The huskies had chewed through the sled lashings and canvas coverings. In fact, nothing, no matter how remotely edible, had escaped them. They had eaten a pair of Perrault's moose-hide moccasins, chunks out of the leather traces, and even 2 feet of lash from the end of Francois's whip. He broke from a mournful contemplation of it to look over at his wounded dogs. "Ah, my friends," he said softly, "maybe it make you mad dog, those many bites. Maybe all mad dog. Sacre dam. What you think, eh, Perrault?" The courier shook his head dubiously. With 400 miles of trail still between him and Dawson, he could ill afford to have madness break out among his dogs. 2 hours of cursing and exertion got the harness into shape, and the wound-stiffened team was under way. Struggling painfully over the hardest part of the trail they had yet encountered. and for that matter the hardest between them and Dawson. The 30-mile river was wide open. Its wild water defied the frost, and it was in the eddies only and in the quiet places that the ice held it all. 6 days of exhausting toil were required to cover those 30 terrible miles, and terrible they were, for every foot of them was accomplished at the risk of life to dog and man. A dozen times Perrault, nosing the way, broke through the ice bridges, being saved by the long pole he carried, which he so held that it fell each time across the hole made by his body. Good trick. But a cold snap was on, the thermometer registering 50 below zero, and each time he broke through he was compelled for very life to build a fire and dry his garments. Nothing daunted him. It was because nothing daunted him that he had been chosen for government courier. He took all manner of risks, resolutely thrusting his little weazened face into the frost and struggling on from dim dawn to dark. He skirted the frowning shores on rim ice that bent and crackled underfoot, and upon which they dared not halt. Once the sled broke through, with Dave and Buck, and they were half frozen and all but drowned by the time they were dragged out. The usual fire was necessary to save them. They were coated solidly with ice, and the 2 men kept them on the run around the fire, sweating and thawing, so cold that they were singed by the flames. Hello. At another time, Spitz went through, dragging the whole team after him up to Buck, who strained backwards with all his strength, his 4 paws on the slippery edge and the ice quivering and snapping all around. But behind him was Dave, likewise straining backward, and behind the sled was Francois, pulling till his tendons cracked. Again the rim ice broke away before and behind, and there was no escape except up the cliff. Perrault scaled it by a miracle, while Francois prayed for just that miracle. And with every thong, the sled lashing and that miracle, and that bit of harness rove into the long rope. Let me try it again. And with every thong, the sled lashing and the last bit of harness rove into a long rope. The dogs were hoisted one by one to the cliff crest. There's a typo here in this book. It says oni by one instead of one by one. Francois came up last after the sled and load. Then came the search for a place to descend, which descent was ultimately made by the aid of the rope, and night found them back on the river with a 1/4 of a mile to the day's credit. By the time they made the Hootalinqua and good ice, Buck was played out. The rest of the dogs were in like condition, but Perrault, to make up lost time, pushed them late and early. The first day they covered 35 miles to the Big Salmon. The next day 35 more to the Little Salmon. The third day 40 miles, which brought them well up toward the 5 Fingers. Buck's feet were not so compact and hard as the feet of the huskies. His had softened during the many generations since the day his last wild ancestor was tamed by a cave dweller or river man. A day long he limped in agony. Vena volvo germo. Still don't speak Spanish or Portuguese. His had softened during the many generations since the day his last wild ancestor was tamed by a cave dweller or river man. All day long he limped in agony, and camp once made, laid down like a dead dog. Hungry as he was, he would not move to receive his ration of fish, which Francois had to bring him. Also, the dog driver rubbed Buck's feet for half an hour each night after supper, and sacrificed the tops of his own moccasins to make 4 moccasins for Buck. This was a great relief, and Buck caused even the weazened face of Perrault to twist itself into a grin one morning when Francois forgot the moccasins and Buck lay on his back, his 4 feet waving appealingly in the air, and refused to budge without them. Later his feet grew hard to the trail, and the well-worn footgear was thrown away. Hello, slimy ducks. At the Pelly one morning, as they were harnessing up, Dolly, who had never been conspicuous for anything, went suddenly mad. She announced her condition by a long, heart-breaking wolf howl that sent every dog bristling with fear, then sprang straight for Buck. He had never seen a dog go mad, nor did he have any reason to fear madness. Yet he knew that here was horror, and fled away from it in a panic. Straight away he raced, with Dolly panting and frothing 1 leap behind. Nor could she gain on him, so great was his terror, nor could he leave her, so great was her madness. He plunged through the wooded breast of the island, flew down at the lower end, crossed a back channel filled with rough ice to another island, gained a 3rd island, curved back to the main river, and in desperation started to cross it. And at the time, though he did not look, he could hear her snarling just 1 leap behind. Francois called to him 1/4 of a mile away, and he doubled back, still 1 leap ahead, gasping painfully for air, and putting all his faith in that Francois would save him. The dog driver held the axe poised in his hand, and as Buck shot past him, the axe crashed down upon the mad Dolly's head. Crying Isaac face, I agree. Poor Dolly. Buck staggered over against the sled, exhausted, sobbing for breath, helpless. This was Spitz's opportunity. He sprang upon Buck, and twice his teeth sank into his unresisting foe, and ripped and tore the flesh to the bone. Then Francois's lash descended, and Buck had the satisfaction of watching Spitz receive the worst whipping as yet administered to any of the teams. "One devil, that Spitz," remarked Perrault. "Some damn day him kill that Buck." "That Buck 2 devils," was Francois's rejoinder. "All the time I watch that Buck I know for sure. Listen, some damn fine day, him get mad like hell, and then him chew that Spitz all up and spit him out in the snow. Sure, I know." French Canadians. From then on it was war between them. Spitz, as lead dog and acknowledged master of the team, felt his supremacy threatened by this strange Southland dog. And strange Buck was to him, for of the many Southland dogs he had known, not one had shown up worthily in camp and on trail. They were all too soft, dying under the toil, the frost, and starvation. Buck was the exception. He alone endured and prospered, matching the husky in strength, savagery, and cunning. Then he was a masterful dog. And what made him dangerous was the fact that the club of the man in the red sweater had knocked all blind pluck and rashness out of his desire for mastery. He was preeminently cunning, and could bide his time with a patience that was nothing less than primitive. It was inevitable that the clash for leadership should come. Buck wanted it. He wanted it because it was his nature, because he had been gripped tightly by that nameless, incomprehensible pride of the trail and trace. that pride which holds dogs in the toil to the last gasp, which lures them to die joyfully in the harness, and breaks their hearts as if they are cut out of the harness. And breaks their hearts if they are cut out of the harness. This was the pride of Dave as wheel dog, of Sol-leks as he pulled with all his strength, the pride that laid hold of them at break of camp, transforming them from sour and sullen brutes into straining, eager, ambitious creatures, the pride that spurred them on all day and dropped them at pitch of camp at night, letting them fall back into gloomy unrest and uncontent. This was the pride that bore up Spitz and made him thrash the sled dog, who blundered and shirked in the traces or hid away at harness-up time in the morning. Likewise, it was this pride that made him fear Buck as a possible lead dog. And it was Buck's pride, too. He openly threatened the other's leadership. He came between him and the shirks he should have punished. And he did it deliberately. One night there was a heavy snowfall, and in the morning Pike, the malingerer, did not appear. He was securely hidden in his nest under a foot of snow. Francois called him and sought him in vain. Spitz was wild with wrath. He raged through the camp, smelling and digging in every likely place, snarling so frightfully that Pike heard and shivered in his hiding place. But when he was at last unearthed, and Spitz flew at him to punish him, Buck flew with equal rage in between. So unexpected was it, and so shrewdly managed, that Spitz was hurled backward and off his feet. Pike, who had been trembling abjectly, took heart at this open mutiny, and sprang upon his overthrown leader. Buck, to whom fair play was a forgotten code, likewise sprang upon Spitz, but Francois, chuckling at the incident while unswerving in the administration of justice, brought his lash down upon Buck with all his might. This failed to drive Buck from his prostrate rival, and the butt of the whip was brought into play. Half stunned by the blow, Buck was knocked backward, and the lash laid upon him again and again, while Spitz soundly punished the many times offending Pike. In the days that followed, as Dawson grew closer and closer, Buck still continued to interfere between Spitz and the culprits, but he did it craftily, when Francois was not around. With the covert mutiny of Buck, a general insubordination sprang up and increased. Dave and Sol-leks were unaffected, but the rest of the team went from bad to worse. Things no longer went right. There was a continual bickering and jangling. Trouble was always afoot. And at the bottom of it was Buck. He kept Francois busy, for the dog driver was in constant apprehension of the life and death struggle between the two, which he knew must take place sooner or later. And on more than one night the sounds of quarreling and strife among the other dogs turned him out of his sleeping robe, fearful that Buck and Spitz were at it. But the opportunity did not present itself, and they pulled into Dawson one dreary afternoon, with the great fight still to come. Here were many men and countless dogs, and Buck found them all at work. It seemed the ordained order of things that dogs should work. All day they swung up and down the main street in long teams, and in the night their jingling bells still went by. They hauled cabin logs and firewood, freighted up to the mines, and did all manner of work that horses did in the Santa Clara Valley. Here and there buck meant Southland dogs, but in the main they were the wild wolf husky breed. Every night, regularly at 9, at 12, at 3, they lifted a nocturnal song, a weird and eerie chant in which it was Buck's delight to join. With the aurora borealis, flaming coldly overhead, or the stars leaping in the frost dance, and the land numb and frozen under its pall of snow, this song of the huskies might have been the defiance of life, only it was pitched in minor key, with long-drawn wailings and half-sobs, and was more the pleading of life, the articulate travail of existence. It was an old song, old as the breed itself, one of the first songs of the younger world in a day, and songs were sad. It was invested with the woe of unnumbered generations, this plate by which Buck was so strangely stirred. When he moaned and sobbed, it was with the pain of living that was of old the pain of his wild fathers, and the fear and mystery of the cold and dark that was to them fear and mystery. And that he should be stirred by it marked the completeness with which he harked back through the ages of fire and roof to the raw beginnings of life in the howling ages. 7 days from the time they pulled into Dawson, they dropped down the steep bank by the barracks to the Yukon Trail and pulled for dry and salt water. Perrault was carrying despatches, if anything more urgent than those he had brought in. Perrault was carrying dispatches, if anything more urgent than those he had brought in. Also, the travel pride had gripped him, and he proposed to make the record trip of the year. Several things favored him in this. The week's rest had recuperated the dogs and put them in thorough trim. The trail they had broken into the country was packed hard by later journeyers, and further, the police had arranged in 2 or 3 places deposits of grub for dog and man, and he was traveling light. They made 60 Mile, which is a 50-mile run on the first day, and the second day saw them booming up the Yukon well on their way to Pelly. But such splendid running was achieved not without great trouble and vexation on the part of Francois. The insidious revolt led by Buck had destroyed the solidarity of the team. It no longer was at one dog leaping in the traces. The encouragement Buck gave the rebels led them into all kinds of petty misdemeanors. No more was Spitz a leader greatly to be feared. The old awe departed, and they grew equal to challenging his authority. Pike robbed him of half a fish one night, and gulped it down under the protection of Buck. Another night Dub and Joe fought Spitz and made him forego the punishment they deserved. And even Billy, the good-natured, was less good-natured, and whined not half so placatingly as in former days. Buck never came near Spitz without snarling and bristling menacingly. In fact, his conduct approached that of a bully, and he was given to swaggering up and down before Spitz's very nose. The breaking down of discipline likewise affected the dogs in their relations with one another. They quarreled and bickered more than ever among themselves, till at times the camp was a howling bedlam. Dave and Solex alone were unaltered, though they were made irritable by the unending squabbling. Francois swore strange, barbarous oaths, and stamped the snow in futile rage, and tore his hair. His lash was always singing among the dogs, but it was of small avail. Directly his back was turned, they were at it again. He backed up Spitz with his whip, while Buck backed up the remainder of the team. Francois knew he was behind all the trouble, but Buck knew he knew, but Buck was too clever ever again to be caught red-handed. He worked faithfully in the harness, for the toil had become a delight to him. Yet it was a greater delight slyly to precipitate a fight amongst his mates and tangle the traces. At the mouth of the Tahkeena, one night after supper, Dub turned up a snowshoe rabbit, blundered it, and missed. In a second, the whole team was in full cry. 100 yards away was a camp of the Northwest Police, with 50 dogs, huskies all, who joined the chase. The rabbit sped down the river, turned off into a small creek, up the frozen bed of which it was held steadily. It ran lightly on the surface of the snow, while the dogs plowed through by main strength. Buck led the pack, 60 strong, around bend after bend, but he could not gain. He lay down low to the race, whining eagerly, his splendid body flashing forward leap by leap in the wan white moonlight. And leap by leap, like some pale frost wraith, the snowshoe rabbit flashed on ahead. All that stirring of old instincts, which at stated periods drives men out from the sounding cities to forest and plain to kill things by chemically propelled leaden pellets, the blood-lust, the joy to kill, all this was Buck's, only it was infinitely more intimate. He was ranging at the head of the pack, running the wild thing down, the living meat, to kill with his own teeth and wash his muzzle to the eyes in warm blood. There is an ecstasy that marks the summit of life, and beyond which life cannot rise, and such is the paradox of living. This ecstasy comes when one is most alive, and it comes as a complete forgetfulness that one is alive. This ecstasy, this forgetfulness of living, comes to the artist caught up and out of himself in a sheet of flame. It comes to the soldier, war-mad, and on a stricken field and refusing quarter, and it came to Buck, leading the pack, sounding the old wolf cry, straining after the food that was alive and that fled swiftly before him through the moonlight. That's true. You can tell that it's gonna drop eventually. The call of the wild is going to be said eventually. He was sounding the deeps of his nature, and of the parts of his nature that were deeper than he, going back into the womb of time. He was mastered by the sheer surging of life, the tidal wave of being, the perfect joy of each separate muscle, joint, and sinew, in that it was everything that was not death, that it was aglow and rampant, expressing itself in movement, flying exultingly under the stars and over the face of dead matter that did not move. But Spitz, cold and calculating even in his supreme moods, left the pack and cut across a narrow neck of land where the creek made a long bend around. Buck did not know of this, and as he rounded the bend, the frost wraith of a rabbit still flitting before him, he saw another and larger frost wraith leap from the overhanging bank into the immediate path of the rabbit. It was Spitz. The rabbit could not turn, and as the white teeth broke its back in mid-air, it shrieked as loudly as a stricken man may shriek. At sound of this, the cry of life plunging down from life's apex in the grip of death, the full pack at Buck's heels raised a hell's choir of delight. Buck did not cry out. He did not check himself, but drove in upon Spitz, shoulder to shoulder, so hard that he missed the throat. They rolled over and over in the powdery snow. Spitz gained his feet almost as though he had not been overthrown, slashing Buck down the shoulder and leaping clear. Twice his teeth clipped together like the steel jaws of a trap as he backed away for better footing, with lean and lifting lips that writhed and snarled. In a flash Buck knew it. The time had come. It was to the death. As they circled about, snarling, ears laid back, keenly watchful for the advantage, the scene came to Buck with a sense of familiarity. He seemed to remember it all, the white woods, the earth, and moonlight, and the thrill of battle. Over the whiteness and silence brooded a ghostly calm. There was not the faintest whisper of air. Nothing moved. Not a leaf quivered. The visible breaths of the dogs rising slowly and lingering in the frosty air. They had made short work of the snowshoe rabbit, these dogs that were ill-tamed wolves. And they were now drawn up in an expectant circle. They, too, were silent, their eyes only gleaming and their breaths drifting slowly upward. To Buck it was nothing new or strange, this scene of old time. It was as though it had always been the wanted way of things. Spitz was a practiced fighter. From Spitzbergen through the Arctic and across Canada and the Barrens, he had held his own with all manner of dogs and achieved to mastery over them. Bitter rage was his, but never blind rage. In passion to rend and destroy, he never forgot that his enemy was in like passion to rend and destroy. He never rushed till he was prepared to receive a rush, never attacked till he had first defended that attack. In vain Buck strove to sink his teeth in the neck of the big white dog. Wherever his fangs struck for the softer flesh, they were countered by the fangs of Spitz. Fang clashed fang, and lips were cut and bleeding, but Buck could not penetrate his enemy's guard. Then he warmed up and enveloped Spitz in a whirlwind of rushes. Time and time again he tried for the snow-white throat, where life bubbled near to the surface, and each time and every time Spitz slashed him and got away. Then Buck took to rushing, as though for the throat, when suddenly drawing back his head and curved in from the side, he would drive his shoulder at the shoulder of Spitz as a ram by which to overthrow him. But instead, Buck's shoulder was slashed down each time as Spitz leaped away lightly. Spitz was untouched, while Buck was streaming with blood and panting hard. The fight was growing desperate, and all the while the silent and wolfish circle waited to finish off whichever dog went down. As Buck grew winded, Spitz took to rushing, and he kept him staggering for footing. Once Buck bent over, and the whole circle of 60 dogs started up, but he recovered himself almost in mid-air, and the circle sank down again and waited. But Buck possessed a quality that made for greatness: imagination. He fought by instinct, but he could fight by head as well. He rushed as though attempting the old shoulder trick, but at the last instant swept low to the snow and in. His teeth closed on Spitz's left foreleg. There was a crush of breaking bone, and the white dog faced him on 3 legs. Thrice he tried to knock him over, then repeated the trick and broke the right foreleg. Despite the pain and helplessness, Spitz struggled madly to keep up. He saw the silent circle, with gleaming eyes, lolling tongue, and silvery breath drifting upward, closing in upon him as he had seen similar circles close in upon beaten antagonists in the past. Only this time he was the one who was beaten. There was no hope for him. Buck was inexorable. Mercy was a thing reserved for gentler climes. He maneuvered for the final rush. The circle had tightened him till he could feel the breath of the huskies on his flanks. He could see them, beyond Spitz, and to either side, half crouching for the spring, their eyes fixed upon him. A pause seemed to fall. Every animal was motionless, as though turned to stone. Only Spitz quivered and bristled as he staggered back and forth, snarling with horrible menace, as though to frighten off impending death. Then Buck sprang in and out, and while he was in, shoulder had at last squarely met shoulder. The dark circle became a dot on the moon-flooded snow as Spitz disappeared from view. Buck stood and looked on, the successful champion, the dominant primordial beast, who made his kill and found it good. End of part 3. Ooh, baby! Things are heating up. Spitz is dead. Rest in peace, Spitz. Who else was it? Dolly is dead. Rest in peace, Dolly, the mad dog. Let's see. Dog fighting is so wrong. I can't believe they let children read this. Well, the dogs are fighting on their own. It's not like the men are wanting them to fight. If anything, the men were trying to stop this fight from occurring. Dogs will fight each other. Part of nature. Conflict is nature. Nature is conflict. The author knows what he's doing. Yeah, but I mean, what do you mean? It's a story. It has to have conflict. All stories have conflict. This one happens to be about a dog. The conflict is going to be with other dogs. And it's not like he didn't see. I wish the dogs would fight humans. We'll see. Maybe that would happen. Personally, the humans would win, most likely. I read this at school. Multiple choice about the ways the dogs died. That's craziness. I don't know what. I guess that is basically the plot of the book. Dogs living and dying. So I guess it's not that mad. Things are certainly heating up. We're getting some dead dogs now. I'm from Argentina. You speak Portuguese? Portuguese? We were speaking some Portuguese earlier in the stream. This was a Spanish and Portuguese language stream at the beginning. Yeah, things are heating up. We got part 4 here. Yeah. Just Spanish and English. That's so sad. It is sad. Life itself is sad. Nature is brutal. No More Dead Dogs. That's a book that I had to read in school about a kid who was sick and tired of reading books about dogs dying. I don't remember anything else about it except for that it did the alternating chapters thing where one chapter is from one character, another chapter is from another character, which I hate. I hate that so much when books do that. They didn't inflict that on me. I liked it a book. I don't know. I like this book so far. Pretty exciting stuff. Will you be doing a part 3 to this book? Oh, I'm not. Even. Yeah, I probably. Yeah, I'll probably have to call it. Yeah, there's no way I'm gonna read the rest of it tonight. I'll probably read part 4 and maybe call it then, because I started kind of late into the night here. I was playing some. Yeah, there's about. We're on page 55 out of 107, so we got 52 pages left. Lord of the Flies. That's another book, not in the public domain though. Won't be able to read that one on stream for I think that came out in the 50s. Won't be able to read that one until 2050. Lemony Snicket, that will be in the public domain in about 100 years. Never going to be able to read that one on stream. I'll probably be dead before Lemony Snicket is public domain. The Great Gatsby. The Great Gatsby is about a very rich man who tries to woo another man's wife. That one will be public domain in a couple of years. Oh, that was like 20. Yeah, that one already might be public domain actually. I have read it a couple of times. They make you read it in school. Hopefully I live till 2075. Yeah, me too. Great Gatsby, 1925. So yeah, that one might already even be public domain, I think. Because it's a little bit less than 100 years for public domain, if I remember correctly. Could do that one. Probably not. It's not too much a wintertime book. I theme things very much my head automatically themes things to the seasons, where I think, oh, that's a summertime movie. I can watch that in the summer, but not in the winter. I can watch that in the spring, but not in the fall. So maybe I'll read Great Gatsby next summer if it's in the public domain. I'll look into it. But The Call of the Wild here is almost all of Jack London's stuff are PD, public domain. Sounds good. I do want to get part 4 here read. Could you do First Chronicles, please? First Chronicles? You want to do First Chronicles? I could do First Chronicles. I have to read it anyways. I have a Bible book club that I have to read First Chronicles for next 2 weeks from now. I don't know if you know about that. Oh, you might be into that. You might maybe I know you, but I could do First Chronicles. I don't know who any of these people are except for Dr. Angels and obviously a few others who used their name. Need history. What's a little history fact I can give you to satiate your history hunger? What's a fun one? Oh, a fruit fly. Oh, Caesar. I always can dip into the Rome well. There's so many stories about Rome. Caesar, as a child, as a young man, a rich young man. I was about to say that. As a rich young man, you might have heard this story. It's a famous story about Caesar. It comes from Suetonius, I believe, so not to be trusted. Suetonius was is considered somewhat of the. He writes exciting histories, but you know, sort of like not exactly accurate or not exactly provable. Nobody else wrote a lot of the stories he wrote, so maybe they're true. But this comes from him, I believe. A story that when he was a young man, he was abducted by pirates on the Mediterranean. And the entire time he was with the pirates, he was acting all haughty and, what was becoming of him as a young aristocrat. And the entire time when they were trying to ration, or not ration, they were trying to get the ransom, when they were trying to ransom him off, he they said something like, "Oh, we want 50 pounds of silver," and he said, "50? I'm worth at least twice that," and made them increase the ransom because of his pride. And the entire time he's sitting there, he's so haughty. He's like, "Oh, you silly pirates!" He became friends with them somewhat because they liked him. You silly pirates! I hate you all so much. When I get out of here, I'm gonna find you all and crucify you. And they all laughed and laughed and laughed until he did come back and crucified every single one of them. But he was nice about it. He put them out of their misery and cut their throats so they wouldn't have to sit on the cross for days. Caesar, not the best person in the world. The Romans, you don't want to go. Rome is cool to learn about, but no, you don't want to live in Rome. Rome sucks. Yeah, nice guy. Who's your favorite author in the moral genre? I don't know what moral, like fables, like stories that have like a moral, like a fable. A story that has a moral to it, you mean? I don't know that many fables. I did some Aesop's fables a couple nights ago. Well, I guess Aesop, because he's the classic, the Greek fabulist Aesop. I don't know any others, so I'm gonna say that one. They were pretty fun. That was what I did for my first stream a couple nights ago, or almost a week ago. It was pretty good. Fun times, short little things. It's like he did the tortoise and the hare, and my phone is buzzing. The ox, the fly lands on the ox. I don't know any other fabulists. So, Fable, that's a game. I guess that's another one. The game Fable. I don't think it's a fable, but... What about a book that you actually learned something from, not like a fantasy novel? Non-fiction, you mean? Or something that I learned from that's fiction? Because you can learn from fiction. I don't, I like, I think his name was Ben McIntyre for non-fiction. Learned from fiction. For non-fiction, I think his name was Ben McIntyre. He wrote, Operation, what is it? Operation Body Bag, Agent Zigzag, and I think another one. He does World War II era histories about sort of strange operations. What's a story that I learned from that's not a fantasy novel, but I learned from? I guess I like reading naturalists, sort of like London here, because they can talk about. I guess I did not realize the first time I read it that the book Blood Meridian by McCarthy is based on a true story. It's loosely based on a true story, based on a true roving gang of scalpers. It taught me a lot of words, like desert words, like about rocks. I guess it didn't teach me them because I can't remember any of them now. So really I didn't learn anything. It just uses a lot of them. And it does teach you quite a bit about the sort of middle, kind of forgotten eras of American history. We don't. Americans don't really like to seem to like to talk about anything past like for anything from about 1800 to about 1900. We kind of just like to say, don't worry about that. Some president got shot in the back of the head in a movie theater. That's all you need to know. Movie theater in a theater. That's all you need to know from that whole century. We don't like to talk about that in America. Thanks. I'll look into them perhaps. Yeah, it's a decent story. Definitely if you. I mean, definitely if you don't like this, you won't like that book. If you don't like this one, that one's more brutal, but it's towards humans and animals, but mostly humans. That book I think has multiple. I'm not even gonna say it. It's too gross. But yeah, that book is not exactly pleasant. Blood Meridian by Cormac McCarthy. Rest in peace, Cormac McCarthy. He died this summer. Rest in peace, Dolly. Rest in peace, Spitz. Part 4. Who has won to mastership? What I say? I speak true when I say that buck too, devils. This was Francois's speech next morning when he discovered Spitz missing and Buck covered with wounds. He drew him to the fire and by its light pointed them out. That Spitz fought like hell, said Perrault, as he surveyed the gaping ribs and cuts. And that Buck fought like two hells, was Francois's answer. And now we made good time. No more Spitz, no more trouble, sure. While Perrault packed up the camp outfit and loaded the sled, the dog driver proceeded to harness the dogs. Buck trotted up to the place Spitz would have occupied as leader, but Francois, not noticing him, brought Solex to the coveted position. In his judgment, Solex was the best lead dog left. Buck sprang upon Solex in a fury, driving him back and standing in his place. Francois cried, slapping his thighs gleefully. Look at that Buck! Him kill that Spitz! Him take the job! Go away, Chook! He cried, but Buck refused to budge. He took Buck by the scruff of the neck, and though the dog growled threateningly, dragged him to one side and replaced Solex. The old dog did not like it, and showed plainly that he was afraid of Buck. Francois was obdurate. I don't know what that word means. Obdurate. Obdurate. Let's learn a word. I don't know what it means, and I want to. I'm going to look this one up. Obdurate. Stubbornly refusing to change one's opinion or or
obdurate.
Course of action. Obdurate.
Obdurate.
Obdurate. Stubbornly refusing to change one's course of action. Obdurate. Now we know. Francois was obdurate. But when he turned his back, Buck again displayed Solex, who was not at all unwilling to go. Francois was angry. Now, by gar, I fix you! He cried, coming back with a heavy club in his hand. Buck remembered the man in the red sweater and retreated slowly. Nor did he attempt to charge in when Solex was once more brought forward. But he circled just beyond the range of the club, snarling with bitterness and rage, and while he circled he watched the club so as to dodge it, if thrown by Francois, for he was become wise in the way of clubs. The driver went about his work, and he called to Buck when he was ready to put him in his old place in front of Dave. Buck retreated 2 or 3 steps. Francois followed him up, whereupon he again retreated. After some time of this, Francois threw down the club, thinking that Buck feared a thrashing, but Buck was in open revolt. He wanted not to escape a clubbing, but to have the leadership. It was his by right. He had earned it, and he would not be content with less. Perrault took a hand. Between them they ran him about for a better part of an hour. They threw clubs at him. He dodged. They cursed him, and his fathers and mothers before him, and all his seed to come after him down to the remotest generation, and every hair on his body and drop of blood in his veins. And he answered curse with snarl, and kept out of their reach. He did not try to run away, but retreated around and around the camp, advertising plainly that when his desire was met, he would come in and be good. Francois sat down and scratched his head. Perrault looked at his watch and swore. Time was flying, and they should have been on the trail an hour gone. Francois scratched his head again. Julie Deserti, thank you for the compliment. Francois scratched his head again. He shook it and grinned sheepishly at the courier, who shrugged his shoulders in sign that they were beaten. Then Francois went up to where Sol-leks stood and called to Buck. Buck laughed as dogs laugh, yet kept his distance. Francois unfastened Sol-leks's traces, and put him back in his old place. The team stood harnessed to the sled in an unbroken line, ready for the trail. There was no place for Buck save at the front. Once more Francois called, and once more Buck laughed and kept away. "Throwing down the club!" Perrault commanded. Francois complied, whereupon Buck trotted in, laughing triumphantly, and swung around into position at the head of the team. His traces were fashioned, the sled broken out, and with both men running, they dashed out onto the river trail. Highly as the dog driver had forevalued Buck with his two devils, he found, while the day was yet young, that he had undervalued. And at a bound, Buck took up the duties of leadership, and where judgment was required and quick thinking and quick acting, he showed himself the superior even of Spitz, of whom Francois had never seen an equal. But it was in giving the law and making his mates live up to it that Buck excelled. Dave and Sol-leks did not mind the change in leadership. It was none of their business. Their business was to toil, and toil mightily, in the traces. So long as that were not interfered with, they did not care what happened. Billy, the good-natured, could lead for all they care. Billy, the good-natured, could lead for all they cared, so long as he kept order. The rest of the team, however, had grown unruly during the last days of Spitz, and their surprise was great now that Buck proceeded to lick them into shape. Pike, who pulled at Buck's heels, and who never put an ounce more of his weight against the breast band than he was compelled to do, was swiftly and repeatedly shaken for loafing, and ere the first day was done he was pulling more than ever before in his life. The first night in camp, Joe, the sour one, was punished roundly, a thing that Spitz had never succeeded in doing. Buck simply smothered him by virtue of superior weight, and cut him up till he ceased snapping and began to whine for mercy. The general tone of the team picked up immediately. It recovered its old-time solidarity, and once more the dogs leapt as one dog in the traces. At the Rink Rapids, 2 native huskies, Teek and Kuna, were added, and the celebrity with which Buck broke them in took away Francois's breath. "Never such a dog as that Buck," he cried. "No, never, never." I don't know what he means by that. "Him worth $1,000, by gar. What you say, Perrault?" These are French Canadians. I don't know what they're saying. And Perrault nodded. He was ahead of the record then, and gaining day by day. The trail was in excellent condition, well packed and hard, and there was no new fallen snow with which to contend. It was not too cold. The temperature dropped to 50 below zero and remained there the whole trip. The men rode and ran by turn, and the dogs were kept on the jump, but infrequent stoppages. The 30-mile river was comparatively coated with ice, and they covered in one day going out what had taken them 10 days coming in. In one run they made a 60-mile dash from the foot of the lake La Barge to the White Horse Rapids. Across Marsh, Tagish, and Bennett, 70 miles of lakes, they flew so fast that the man whose turn it was to run towed behind the sled at the end of a rope. And as the last night of the second week they topped White Pass and dropped down the sea slope with the lights of Skaguni and the shipping at their feet. It was a record run. Each day for 14 days they had averaged 40 miles. For 3 days Perrault and Francois threw chests up and down the main street of Skagui and were deluged with invitations to drink, while the team was the constant center of a worshipful crowd of dog-busters and mushers. Then 3 or 4 Western bad men aspired to clean out the town, were riddled like pepper boxes for their pains, and public interest turned to their other idols. Next came official orders. Francois called Buck to him, threw his arms around him, wept over him. And that was the last of Francois and Perrault. Like other men, they passed out of Buck's life for good. A Scotch half-breed took charge of him and his mates, and in company with a dozen other dog teams, he started back over the weary trail to Dawson. It was no light running now, nor record time, but heavy toil each day with a heavy load behind. For this was the main trail, carrying word from the world to the men who sought gold under the shadow of the pole. Buck did not like it, but he bore up well to the work, taking pride in it after the manner of Dave and Sol-leks, and seeing that his mates, whether they prided in it or not, did their fair share. It was a monotonous life, operating with machine-like regularity. One day was very like another. At a certain time each morning the cooks turned out, fires were built, and breakfast was eaten. Then, while some broke camp, others harnessed the dogs, and they were under way an hour or so before the darkness fell, which gave warning of light. At night, camp was made. Some pitched the flies, other cut firewood and pine boughs for the beds, and still others carried water or ice for the cooks. Also, the dogs were fed. To them, this was the one feature of the day, though it was good to loaf around after the fish was eaten for an hour or so with the other dogs, of which there were 50 and odd. There were fierce fighters among them, but 3 battles with the fiercest brought Buck to mastery, so that when he bristled and showed his teeth, they got out of his way. Best of all, perhaps, he loved to live near the fire, hind legs crouched under him, forelegs stretched out in front, head raised, and eyes blinking dreamily at the flames. Sometimes he thought of Judge Miller's big house in the sun-kissed Santa Clara Valley, and of the cement swimming tank, and Isabel the Mexican hairless, and Toots the Japanese pug. But oftener he remembered the man in the red sweater, the death of Curly, the great fight with Spitz, and the good things he had eaten or would like to eat. He was not homesick. The sunland was very dim and distant, and such memories had no power over him. Far more potent were the memories of his heredity that gave things he had never seen before a seeming familiarity. The instincts, which were but the memories of his ancestors become habits, which had lapsed into latter days, and still later in him quickened and become alive again. Sometimes as he crouched there, blinking dreamily at the flames, it seemed that the flames were of another fire, and that as he crouched by this other fire, he saw another and different man from the half-breed cook before him. This other man was shorter of leg and longer of arm, with muscles that were stringy and knotty rather than round and swelling. The hair of this man was long and matted, and his head slanted back under it from the eyes. He uttered strange sounds, and seemed very much afraid of the darkness, into which he peered continually, clutching in his hands, which hung midway between knee and foot, a stick with a heavy stone made fast to the end. He was all but naked, a ragged and fire-scorched skin hanging part way down his back, but on his body there was much hair. In some places across the chest and shoulders, and down the outside of the arms and thighs, it was matted into almost a thick fur. He did not stand erect, but with trunk inclined forward from the hips, on legs that bent at the knees. About his body there was a peculiar springiness or resiliency, almost cat-like, and a quick alertness, as of one who lived in perpetual fear of things seen and unseen. At other times this hairy man squatted by the fire with head between his legs and slept. On such occasion his elbows were on his knees, his hands clasped above his head, as though to shed rain by the hairy arms. And beyond that fire, in the circling darkness, Buck could see many gleaming coals, 2 by 2, always 2 by 2, which he knew by the eyes of great beasts of prey, which he knew to be the eyes of great beasts of prey, and he could hear the crashing of their bodies through the undergrowth, and the noises they made in the nights, and dreaming there by the Yukon bank, with lazy eyes blinking at the fire, these sounds and sights of another world would make the hair to rise along his back and stand on end across his shoulders up to it and up his neck, till he whimpered low and suppressedly, or growled softly, and the half-breed cook shouted at him, "Hey, you, Buck, wake up!" Whereupon the other world would vanish, and the real world come into his eyes, and he would get up and yawn and stretch, and as though he had been asleep. It was a hard trip, with the mail behind them, and the heavy work wore them down. They were short of weight and in poor condition when they made Dawson, and should have had a 10 days or a week's rest at least, but in 2 days they had dropped down the Yukon bank from the barracks, loaded with letters for the outside. The dogs were tired, the drivers grumbling, and, to make matters worse, it snowed every day. This meant a soft trail, greater friction on the runners, and heavier pulling for the dogs. Yet the drivers were fair through it all, and did their best for the animals. Each night the dogs were attended to first. They ate before the drivers ate, and no man sought his sleeping robe till he had seen to the feet of the dogs he drove. Still their strength went down. Since the beginning of the winter, they had traveled 1,800 miles, dragging sleds the whole weary distance, and 1,800 miles will tell upon the life of the toughest. Buck stood it, keeping his mates up to their work and maintaining discipline, though he too was very tired. Billy cried and whimpered regularly in his sleep each night. Joe was sorer than ever, and Sol-leks was unapproachable, blind side or other side. But it was Dave who suffered most of all. Something had gone wrong with him. He became more morose and irritable, and when camp was pitched at once made his nest where his drivers fed him. Once out of the harness and down, he did not get on his feet again till harness up time in the morning. Sometimes, in the traces, when jerked by a sudden stoppage of the sled or by straining to start it, he would cry out with pain. The driver examined him but could find nothing. All the drivers became interested in his case. They talked it over at mealtime and over their last pipes before going to bed. And one night they held a consolation. He was brought from his nest to the fire and was pressed and prodded till he cried out many times. Something was wrong inside, but they could locate no broken bones, could not make it out. By the time Kassar Bar was reached, he was so weak that he was falling repeatedly in the traces. The Scotch half-breed called a halt and took him out of the team, making the next dog, Sol-leks, fast to the sled. His intention was to rest Dave, letting him run free behind the sled. Sick as he was, Dave resented being taken out, grunting and growling while the traces were unfastened, and whimpering broken-heartedly when he saw Sol-leks in the position he had held and served so long. For the pride of trace and trail was his, and sick unto death, he could not bear that another dog should do his work. When the sled started, he floundered in the soft snow alongside the beaten trail, attacking Sol-leks with his teeth, rushing against him and trying to thrust him off into the soft snow on the other side, striving to leap inside his traces and get between him and the sled, and all the while whining and yelping and crying with grief and pain. The half-breed tried to drive him away with the whip, but he paid no heed to the stinging lash, and the man had not the heart to strike harder. Dave refused to run quietly on the trail behind the sled, whereas the going was easy, but continued to flounder alongside in the soft snow, where the going was most difficult, till exhausted. Then he fled and lay where he fell, howling lugubriously as the long train of sleds churned by. With the last remnant of his strength, he managed to stagger along behind till the train made another stop, when he floundered past the sleds to his own, where he stood alongside Sol-leks. His driver lingered a moment to get a light for his pipe from the man behind. Then he returned and started his dogs. They swung out in the trail with remarkable lack of exertion, turned their heads uneasily, and stopped in surprise. The driver was surprised, too. The sled had not moved. He called his comrades to witness the sight. Dave had bitten through both of Sol-leks's traces, and was standing directly in front of the sled in the proper place. He pleaded with his eyes to remain there. The driver was perplexed. His comrades talked of how a dog could break its heart through being denied the work that killed it, and recalled instances they had known where dogs, too old for the toil or injured, had died because they were cut out of the traces. Also, they held it a mercy, since Dave was to die anyways, that he should die in the traces, heart easy and content. So he was harnessed in again, and proudly he pulled as of old, though more than once he cried out involuntarily from the bite of his inward hurt. Several times he fell down and was dragged in the traces, and once the sled ran upon him so that he limped thereafter in one of his hind legs. But he held out till camp was reached, when his driver made a place for him by the fire. Morning found him too weak to travel. At harness-up time he tried to crawl to his driver, but by convulsive efforts he got to his feet, staggered, and fell. Then he wormed his way forward slowly toward where the harness were being put on his mates. He would advance his forelegs and drag up his body with a sort of hitching movement. When he would advance his forelegs and hitched ahead again for a few more inches, his strength left him. And the last his mates saw of him, he lay gasping in the snow and yearning toward them. But they could hear him mournfully howling till they passed out of sight behind a belt of river timber. Here the train was halted. The Scotch half-breed slowly retraced his steps to the camp that they had left. The men ceased talking. A revolver shot rang out. The man came back hurriedly. The whips snapped. The bells tinkled merrily. The sleds churned along the trail. But Buck knew, and every dog knew, what had taken place behind the belt of river trees. End of part 4. Dog sled is animal abuse. Maybe so, maybe so. But without getting dogs to work for us, we never would have built anything we have now. Not to some degree, what we would consider abuse, the dogs, in this story, the dogs like it. I have never run a dog sled. They were also broken to like it. They were beaten until they liked it. But I've never run a dog sled. For all I know, this is completely accurate, and these dogs really do have this pride in their running and stuff. The same way that a man will work his whole life and then be very sad when he loses his job. An alien, an outsider, might look at that and say, what madness that this man wants to work, when he could, when he would be much better if he didn't work. Things kind of do need to do something. They're clearly not, by our standards, not our standards, they have poor working conditions, a sense of purpose. The working conditions are it's still better than it would be if they were wild dogs. They're guaranteed food every night instead of going hungry for weeks on end until they can find something. How do they get paid? With food. With consistent food, a fire, which they would die without. Dogs go to men because men have fire. That's the initial reason why a dog would come up to a man in these old times. But I think they deserve loving families. There's not that many loving families in the world as there are dogs. And nature is... If these dogs did not have these men, they'd all be dead, except for Buck, who was taken from a loving family. It's just the unfortunate truth of reality that nature is not a coddling and nice place. Reality is not particularly happy by human standards, but it is what it is, and we try to make it better for everything, generally. Usually we're thinking of ourselves first, but I don't like reality. Well, you're living in it, whether you like it or not. Rage against it all you want, dislike it all you want, you're there. There's nothing you can do about it. I personally think that accepting reality as it is better than pretending that another way would be better. True, you can imagine better ways, but can you make them so? I, obviously, not a whole lot of dog sleds nowadays. Yeah, reality sucks. Reality's not the best thing in the world, for sure. It could be better if it was like, a cartoon or something. If it was like Bugs Bunny and you could just get by and fall off a cliff and be fine, and if everything was fun. Revolution. Against what? God? What are you going to revolt against to make reality a better place? You start a revolution in the man's world, you're only going to make it worse for everything. You think that dogs are treated poorly now? The revolution against the world. You think dog fights are bad now? Imagine if there's nothing to against unfair people. Well, kind of unfair of you to throw them out of their position they worked hard for. Fair? There's no fair. What's fair? What is fairness? Fairness is if one person's getting their way, another person isn't getting their way necessarily. There's no fairness. Let's define unfair people. Yes. Let's be like Socrates here. I would like to know what you mean by fair people. Greedy people. Greedy for what? Okay, you're right in this. These people are doing this. I mean, right now they're being done for mail, but it's mail between gold, like gold diggers. These dogs right here, they are just straight up doing it for money. They're trying to dig up gold in the frozen north. So there is no good reason except for that people want money, which they need to feed their families. Kind of unfair of you to assume that they shouldn't be able to feed their families using money. Also, the society that you live in that allows you to be more fair, quote unquote. I'm not trying to be accusatory here. I kind of am taking an accusatory tone, but McCarthy was right. I don't mean to take an accusatory tone, but the society that you built on, the one that allows for dogs to be kept mostly as pets and not put to work, was built on all of this gold that they used dogs to go and get. This gold made us richer as a society than any other society to build a fire. I read that. Last stream. Go check out my last stream if you want to see my reading of that. Very harsh. That book right there, or short story right there, is a good example of reality is not fair. Reality does not care whether you're happy with it or not. It will chew you up and spit you out, and you're just along for the ride, basically. Yeah. To Build a Fire by Jack London on my last stream. That's how I started my last stream, was reading that short story. Very good short story. Very much more brutal than this, mostly because it has a human main character, which obviously not everybody, but me personally. Let's be a slave to the man. Not necessarily saying that, but if you... the only thing that's keeping dogs so that they can know hope. There's definitely hope. It's just that there's no utopia, basically. There's nothing perfect. You can never reach perfection. Right now we're doing pretty good, I think. Obviously not perfect. Even at the time of this short story, pretty good. Compared to what Buck's dreams. Huddled around fires, you can see the eyes of predators poking out at you. All you can do is cover your head to make sure you don't get rained on. All you have is your hands to cover your head from the rain. I never said perfection. All I'm saying is, you can either accept reality or not. That's basically what it comes down to. There's nothing about slavery or freedom in that. There's nothing, except for that you're a slave to reality, always. No matter what, you are always a slave to reality. The things that exist, you can change them, you can play with them, but you're changing them from something that exists to something else that exists. There's what is. There's nothing you can do about that. I'm a slave to a corporation. Yeah, we're all slaves to a corporation or two, for sure, to some degree. You can change reality to a certain point. I live in my fantasy world then. Your right as a free human being to do so. I would never try to take away your right to live in a fantasy, because we all live in a fantasy to some degree. We're all stuck in our own perspective, and our own imagination shapes the world. You can change reality, but to a certain point. You can change reality from one way that reality is to another way that reality is. Like, for example, say we nuke the world and we all die. Well, we went from an Earth that had living things on it to an Earth that doesn't have living things. It's still real. It's all still just reality. Not much point except for that. Not much point to what I'm saying, I guess, except for that things are. They're not necessarily the way they are. Things do change all the time. Things constantly change, always will change, will never stop changing. That's another Cormac McCarthy Blood Meridian. War is the ultimate practice, waiting for its ultimate practitioner. Man loves war because young men love war and old men love war in them. War persists. That's all that book is about, is war. Blood Meridian. The main character is essentially the embodiment of war, or the main antagonist is the embodiment of war in that book, the judge. But that's not the book we're reading today. We're reading Jack London's Call of the Wild, which does contain some brutality to it. 5, 6, 7. There's parts 5, 6, and 7 left in Call of the Wild. And we are over halfway done on it. When are you going to finish the book? Tomorrow night, I think. I don't think I have anything tomorrow night to do. So I'm going to try to finish the last 3 parts. I probably could have gotten it done in 2 streams if I wasn't. I definitely could have, actually, because last stream I read the To Build a Fire short story, and this stream I spent the first hour playing Lyre. Just because there was nobody there. And I didn't want to read to nobody. Reading to 8 people according to Twitch here. Or is that what this thing is called? You can go back and watch. I don't delete the old streams. I gotta figure out a way to upload them to YouTube or something so that I can hold on to them. But, yeah, we were speaking some Spanish, some Portuguese earlier. I was using Google Translate. But yeah, I think tomorrow night I'll finish this book, and as winter rolls around, I get into a more melancholic, darker mood. Maybe we should lighten things up a little bit with the next book I read. I don't know. I'll find something a little bit not so brutal. Maybe not so the law of claw and club. Not so not so much the insignificance of man. Seasonal depression. Yeah, I don't think it's quite that extreme for me. It's just a cold, what does Melville say, a cold, damp November in my soul. Yeah. It's coming to be that time of year. For maybe November will be a darker. Maybe I'll go into some horror stories or something. I'll embrace the darkness for November. But then December can roll around. We are spring. Yes, in the South, you guys are the opposites. So enjoy that. Will you sing that quote using your lyre? It's a kind of too happy an instrument for it, but it's a cold, dark November in my soul. There you go. I'm a beginner on the lyre. I'm not very good, but there you go. I don't even think I'm saying the quote right, the Moby Dick quote, but absolutely brilliant. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So yeah, I think maybe I'll embrace the darkness for November and move on to some horror stories or something after we finish with Call of the Wild here. Get worse, get scarier, and then in December, I think I'll roll around with some. Maybe I was thinking very. I was thinking keep it nice for the December season, for the Christmas time. Maybe Little Women, some Dickens, maybe some Jane Austen or something. Get more into the nice wintry moon, Jane. Yes, I've been meaning to read Emma for years. Maybe I'll do that on stream. But yes, for Santa. That's my plan here, at least. That's my working plan. But first and foremost, I think I need it. Please do it. For you, Julie Deserti, I will do it. Even though it's nice and springtime for you. I don't know which July Deserti. I don't know what. Yeah, Emma's kind of long. Maybe I'll go with that. I don't know. I'll definitely read some Austen for you though, because I like it. I like to read. I like books. That's my thing. That's what I do. But yeah, I think tomorrow night finish Call of the Wild. And I'll leave you all on a poem, so we don't end it. So we end it on a high note, somewhat. By Ina Coolbrith here. Ina Coolbrith. She friends with Jack London, or knew him at least. I don't know how well. I didn't read his. I haven't. I read the Wikipedia on Jack London, but not even fully. But Ina Coolbrith, the first Californian poet laureate, which means I have a book club in Spanish, so book lover here. Well, Julie, this is a page for book lovers, so you have found the right place. This is a Twitch page. Is that what you call it? I don't know. I don't know what the internet words are. But I'll leave you all on a poem by Ina Coolbrith, the first Californian. I just shook my laptop. The first Californian poet laureate, knew Jack London in his time, and is a female. That's a point of fact if you care about that. Longing by Ina Coolbrith. O foolish wisdom sought in books, O aimless fret of household tasks, O chains that bind the hand and mind, a fuller life my spirit asks. For there the grand hills, summer crowned, slope gently downward to the seas. 1 hour of rest upon their breast were worth a year of days like these. Their cool, soft green to ease the pain of eyes that ache o'er printed words. This weary noise, the city's voice, lulled in the sound of bees and birds. For Eden's life within me stirs, and scorns the shackles that I wear. The man life grand, pure soul, strong hand, the limb of steel, the heart of air. And I could kiss, with longing wild, the earth's dear brown bosom, loved so much. A grass blade, fanned across my hand, would thrill me like a lover's touch. The trees would talk with me, the flowers their hidden meanings each make known. The olden lore revived once more when man's and nature's heart were one. And as the pardoned pair might come back to the garden God first framed, and hear him call at even fall, and answer, "Here am I, unashamed," so I, from out these toils, wherein the Eden faith grows stained and dim, would walk a child through nature's wild, and hear his voice and answer him. Relevant to what we were talking about today. A return to a oneness with nature, if such a thing ever existed. If an escape from the world of man, the world of words and work, into the world of nature. Personally, I don't see living in nature as anything less than work, or work as anything less than living in nature. But I can definitely understand the idealistic poet's view of a better world, a world at peace. And I believe that one day we'll reach it. I don't personally begrudge the generations that didn't make it there, the ones that made the mistakes that humanity had to make to get along to a better world. I think that there's a sort of bias to think that we live at the end of time. Always. Any human being who's alive thinks that they're living towards the end, because it's the end of everything they know. But you're not at the end. For all you know, you're at the very beginning. You're at the first 1% of humanity's story. And that all these mistakes, they'll be like nothing in the face of the peace that we eventually find or bring or whatever. We'll see. Or maybe we won't. Have you heard of what happened in Brazil? A girl dying because of the heat. You're the best. Good night, Cold Stone. Good night, Morgan Olivia's 47. I did not hear about that thing that happened in Brazil. Girl dying from heat stroke, from the heat. Unfortunate. I hope she rests in peace. And I hope that everyone rests in peace, tonight and forever. You'll be dead longer than you were ever alive. You didn't exist for longer than you ever have existed. Good night, everyone. I'll be back tomorrow night to finish the Call of the Wild.